The war had turned everything cold. Not just the air, people's hearts too. Private Elias Hart sat inside a shaking military truck, staring out at the white mountains ahead. Snow blew across the windshield like tiny knives. He had been told this mission wasn't about fighting. That was the only reason he said yes. He had already fought enough. He had already lost too much. A letter from his brother still sat folded in his pocket, the last one before his brother's plane went down. Sometimes Elias touched it just to remind himself he was still real. The truck came to a stop at a dead end, a wall of stone, tall and smooth. But then the rocks moved. A steel door opened in the middle of the mountain. 2 guards waved them in. Their uniforms had no country flags, no names, just gray. Silent and strange. The driver turned to Elias. "End of the road, soldier. You're part of the Dawn program now." Elias stepped out. His boots sank into the snow as the door shut behind him, sealing him inside the mountain. The noise of the outside world, wind, trucks, distant planes, disappeared. Everything here hummed, like the air itself was alive. He followed a narrow tunnel lit by yellow lamps. The walls were metal, not rock. At the end stood a woman in a white coat. She smiled as if she already knew him. "Private Hart," she said. "Welcome to Station Aurora. I'm Dr. Anna Rowe." Her voice was calm, but her eyes looked tired, the kind of tired that came from knowing too many secrets. Elias nodded. "Ma'am. I was told this is some kind of experiment." She turned and began walking down the hall. "Not some kind. The experiment. The one that might finally end this war without another bullet being fired." That made him stop. "How?" Dr. Rowe looked over her shoulder. "By changing people, not their bodies, but their minds. Their pain, their fear. Imagine soldiers who remember peace more clearly than war." Elias frowned. "You can do that?" She didn't answer. They entered a large underground room glowing with white light. Strange machines filled the walls, glass tubes, wires, spinning coils. At the center stood a clear chamber, big enough for a person to sit inside. Around it, small monitors flickered with brainwave lines. Several other soldiers stood nearby, some talking quietly, some staring blankly into space. All of them looked different, calmer, quieter, almost peaceful. "This," Dr. Rowe said softly, "is the Aurora Light Field. It can reach deep into memory. It shows people their pain, and helps them let go." Elias didn't like the sound of that. "You mean it changes who they are?" "It helps them remember who they were before the war changed them." She smiled faintly, as if that explanation made it better. Over the next few days, Elias got to know the others. There was Corbin, a tall man with a broken nose who had survived an explosion. He joked too much, but everyone liked him. There was Donnelly, quiet and gentle, who painted in his notebook instead of talking. And there was Sergeant Vance, older, always chewing gum, always watching everything. They all said the same thing: after the treatment, their nightmares were gone. They didn't flinch at loud noises anymore. They could sleep. They could breathe. Elias wanted to believe it. But one night, he saw Corbin sitting in the corridor, shaking. His eyes glowed faintly in the dark, just for a second, before returning to normal. "You all right?" Elias whispered. Corbin nodded slowly. "Yeah. Just, remembering something that never happened." "What?" Corbin smiled weakly. "My mother singing. But she died when I was 3. Elias felt a chill crawl down his neck. The next morning, Dr. Rowe said it was his turn. He lay back inside the glass chamber. Wires were attached to his head and chest. A ring of lights above him began to spin. "Don't be afraid," Dr. Rowe said softly. If you see something, anything, let it happen. The hum started. Then the light, soft and white, like sunrise. He saw flashes of his life, his home, his brother, the field behind their house where they used to chase dragonflies. Then came the darker memories, the screams, the gunfire, the smoke. His brother's plane falling from the sky. Elias shouted, trying to move, but his body wouldn't obey. The lights changed color, blue, then gold. The pain in his chest lifted. The image of the crash turned bright, almost beautiful. His brother was smiling at him through the fire. "Let go, Eli," the voice said. "You don't have to carry it anymore." When the light shut off, Elias gasped for air. His face was wet with tears, but for the first time in years, his heart didn't feel heavy. That night, he went outside the compound. The snow had stopped. He looked up and saw something new, a faint golden shimmer across the sky, like the northern lights but warmer. As he watched, Donnelly walked up beside him. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he said. Elias nodded. "What do you think it is?" Donnelly smiled softly. "Maybe it's us." The next few days were strange. Everyone seemed calmer, even joyful. The air in the tunnels felt lighter. When Elias closed his eyes, he could feel something, not exactly power, but energy, like warmth under his skin. He told Dr. Rowe about it. She didn't look surprised. "Every person we treat," she said, "gives off more of that light. It's as if the human mind, once freed from pain, releases energy." Elias frowned. "You mean it's spreading?" "Yes," she said. "And that's the point. This place isn't just a lab. It's a seed. If the world feels what you're feeling now, maybe it'll stop fighting." Her voice trembled slightly, as if she wasn't sure she believed it herself. But something was happening outside. Rumors spread through the nearby bases, that soldiers were deserting, saying they no longer had the will to kill. That a strange light was appearing in the mountains, making men drop their weapons and cry for home. Elias overheard the officers whispering. Command was sending someone to take control of Station Aurora. When he told Dr. Rowe, her face went pale. "They'll turn it into a weapon," she said. "They'll use it to control people, not free them. What do we do?" Her answer was quiet but firm. "We finish the experiment before they arrive." That night, alarms blared through the tunnels. Trucks were approaching. Soldiers, armed, shouting, filled the main hall. Dr. Rowe grabbed Elias's arm. "It's time." They ran to the lower chamber, a vast room Elias had never seen before. At its center stood a huge machine, larger than anything above, pulsing with golden light. It looked alive. "What is this?" he shouted over the noise. "The final stage," Dr. Rowe said. "If we activate it, the energy will reach beyond this mountain, across countries. It could end the war in minutes." Elias stared at her. "Or destroy everything." "Maybe both," she whispered. Outside, the shouting grew louder. Boots echoed down the hall. Elias looked at the glowing machine, then at Dr. Rowe. "Let's do it." The machine roared to life. Golden light surged through the floor, up the walls, through the mountain itself. Soldiers burst into the chamber, shouting, firing, but the bullets turned to sparks in midair, falling harmlessly. Elias stepped forward, hands shaking, staring into the heart of the light. He thought of his brother, of the fields, of the boy he used to be before all this. He reached out his hand. Dr. Rowe did the same. And as their palms touched the glowing core, everything, the noise, the fear, the war, disappeared. When Elias opened his eyes, there was no mountain. No walls. No sound. Just light. It wasn't blinding, it was soft, endless, warm. He floated, not falling, not standing, just being. He could hear voices, hundreds of them, overlapping like waves, laughter, crying, prayers, music. And through it all, one voice stood out. Elias. He turned. Dr. Rowe was beside him. Her hair floated gently around her face, and her coat glowed like morning fog. "Where are we?" he asked, his voice echoing without air. "Inside the field," she said softly. The machine worked. It connected everything, every mind it touched. Elias frowned. "Connected? You mean? Everyone who's felt pain, fear, loss, they're here. Together. Sharing it." He looked around. Shapes began to form, faces, people, fragments of memory drifting like dust. He saw Corbin laughing by a campfire, Donnelly painting sunlight on a wall, his brother walking toward him from across an invisible field. "Eli," his brother said, smiling. "You finally made it." Elias felt his chest tighten. "Is this real?" His brother nodded. "As real as the things you choose to remember." He reached out, but before he could touch him, the world trembled. The light started to fade at the edges, replaced by flashes of gray and red. The war was trying to pull them back. Dr. Rowe grabbed his hand. "We're losing the connection. The field wasn't meant to last this long. What happens if it breaks?" She hesitated. "Then the energy will return to every person it touched, but changed. It'll carry what we felt here, peace, warmth, connection. It'll spread." Elias nodded slowly. "Then we let it go." He turned toward his brother one last time. "Goodbye." His brother smiled. "No, Eli. Hello." And then the light burst outward. When Elias woke again, he was lying on grass. Real grass. The air smelled like rain. The sky was clear, not gray. He sat up slowly, blinking against the brightness. Around him, the mountain valley was green, alive. The snow was gone. Streams of water ran through the grass where ice had been. All around him, others were waking too, soldiers from both sides, their uniforms torn and dirty, but their faces calm. No one reached for a gun. No one shouted. They just stared at each other, dazed. Dr. Rowe was beside him, breathing hard but smiling. "We're still here." Elias looked at her, then at the others. "What did we do?" She looked up at the sky, where faint golden light still shimmered like dust. "Something the world wasn't ready for." By nightfall, dozens of people had gathered in what used to be the base. They built fires, shared food, helped the wounded. No one mentioned the war. Elias watched as a man in a dark uniform, someone who, hours ago, would have been his enemy, helped Donnelly wrap a bandage around his arm. They spoke quietly, as if trying to remember how to use words that weren't orders or curses. Dr. Rose sat apart, writing in her notebook. Elias joined her. "What will we tell them?" he asked. "The truth," she said. "That we found a way to wake people up." He looked at the people around the fire. "Do you think it'll last?" She closed the notebook. "If enough people remember how it feels, maybe it will." Over the next few days, something impossible began to happen. Messages started arriving from nearby towns, strange stories spreading faster than gunfire ever had. In one village, both sides had dropped their weapons at the same moment, as if struck by the same thought. In another, wounded men stood up and walked after sleeping under the golden light. Farmers said their crops had started growing again, even in winter soil. Mothers said their children stopped crying at night. No one understood it. No one tried to explain it. They just called it the dawn. And somehow, everyone knew it had begun here. A week later, a convoy arrived, jeeps and trucks flying the flag of the Allied command. Soldiers poured out, cautious but not hostile. Their leader, Colonel Avery, stepped forward. He was a serious man, but when he saw the green valley where a frozen mountain had stood, his face softened. Dr. Rowe approached him calmly. "Colonel," she said. "We expected you sooner." He looked around, eyes wide. "What happened here?" Elias stepped forward. "We tried to heal something, sir. I think it worked." Avery turned to him. "There's talk in every city from here to Berlin. Troops refusing to fight. Commanders laying down arms. People, feeling things they can't explain. You did this?" Elias hesitated. "We started it. But it's everyone now." The colonel rubbed his temples, overwhelmed. "Do you realize what this means? The war could end because of," he looked at the sky, "whatever this is." Dr. Rowe nodded. "Not because of force. Because people remembered they're human." That night, Elias couldn't sleep. He walked through the camp, listening to the quiet breathing of men who once would have been enemies. He found Donnelly sitting by a stream, sketching. "What are you drawing?" Elias asked. "The light," Donnelly said, holding up the paper. It showed the valley glowing under a golden sky. "I don't want to forget it." Elias smiled. "I don't think anyone will." But deep inside, he knew nothing this powerful could remain untouched. Days turned into weeks. The world began to change in ways no one expected. Across Europe, battles stopped. Reports flooded in, troops refusing orders, entire regiments leaving trenches to embrace the soldiers across from them. The fighting simply dissolved. Governments were confused. Commanders demanded explanations. Some called it mass hysteria, others, divine intervention. But the truth was simpler. The energy from the Aurora machine had carried the feeling of peace into every person it touched. People were remembering what it felt like to care. Elias and Dr. Rowe were summoned to the capital for questioning. They traveled in silence through cities that looked both broken and new. The damage was still there, ruins, rubble, smoke, but the people were rebuilding with a kind of quiet joy. Children played in the streets. Music returned to cafes. The war wasn't just ending. It was healing. The capital's council chamber was crowded when they arrived. Scientists, generals, doctors, all demanding to know how two people had done what armies couldn't. Dr. Rowe explained as simply as she could. "We discovered that the human mind, when freed from trauma, releases energy. The Aurora field amplified that energy and shared it with others. Peace, in its purest form, is contagious." A general slammed his hand on the table. "You mean to tell us you used soldiers as test subjects and unleashed some kind of emotional plague?" Elias stepped forward. "It wasn't a plague, sir. It was a reminder." The room fell silent. He looked around at them, men who'd made decisions that sent millions to their deaths. "You all forgot what it feels like to be alive. The machine didn't give people peace. It reminded them they already had it." Dr. Rowe placed her hand on his arm, her voice steady. "The experiment is over. Let the world rebuild. Don't try to control it again." After a long pause, the council agreed. There would be no more testing. No more weapons. The Aurora project would be sealed, forever. Months later, peace treaties were signed. Soldiers went home. Borders opened. The world was still scarred, but it was breathing again. Elias and Dr. Rowe returned to the valley where it all began. The mountain had regrown into a forest of wildflowers and clear streams. They built a small cabin near the river and lived quietly, far from the noise of the new governments. Every night, they watched the sky. Sometimes, when the sun set just right, they'd see the faint shimmer of golden light ripple through the clouds, the last trace of the aurora energy still drifting through the world. Dr. Rowe called it the afterglow. Elias called it hope. One evening, years later, Donnelly visited them. His hair had gone gray, but his eyes were still kind. He brought news: schools had opened again, cities were thriving, and people everywhere were telling the same story. That once, in the darkest moment of war, a light appeared in the mountains. A light that made people remember what it meant to be human. Elias smiled. Then maybe it was worth everything. Donnelly nodded. It was. They sat together watching the horizon turn gold. Birds sang in the distance. The world, finally, was quiet. When night fell, Elias stood outside alone. The wind was soft against his face. He looked up at the stars, brighter than he'd ever seen them, and thought of his brother. "I hope you can see this," he whispered. And in that moment, a faint golden wave rippled across the sky, as if answering him. He smiled. Because he knew it wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning, the dawn after everything had been dark. Just light. The years moved quietly. The valley that once hid Station Aurora was no longer a secret place. Villagers came often to see the strange flowers that glowed faintly at night. Travelers said the air there felt different, lighter, as if it carried peace inside it. People began calling it the Valley of Dawn. Elias and Dr. Rowe stayed in their small cabin by the river. They lived simply, growing food, sharing stories with those who visited. No one truly understood what had happened there, but everyone felt it. They said the place could heal sadness. That when you breathed its air, your heart slowed down and your thoughts became quiet. Elias liked it that way. The world had learned enough about weapons. Now it was learning about peace. One morning, as sunlight touched the river, Elias sat outside carving a piece of wood. It was a habit he had learned from his brother. Dr. Rowe brought him tea and smiled. "Another bird?" she asked, looking at the carving. He nodded. "The same one I started a year ago. I keep changing the wings." "Because you never wanted to fly away," she said softly. He smiled at her words. There was truth in them. The world outside their valley had changed completely. The war had ended long ago. Nations rebuilt. Families reunited. Children born after the dawn grew up without fear. They learned about the experiment only as a quiet story told by teachers, that once, people had chosen peace when they had every reason to fight. But there were still questions. Some scientists wanted to rebuild the Aurora machine. They said if it had healed once, it could heal again. Elias always refused. He told them, the light was not in the machine. It was in the people. You cannot build what already lives inside you. They called him old-fashioned. He did not mind. Dr. Rowe continued to write her journals. She wanted future generations to know how it happened, every decision, every risk, every miracle. But she kept the location of the original lab a secret. The world was not ready to use that power again. As the years passed, her hair turned silver. She walked slower, spoke softer. But her mind remained sharp. One night she sat with Elias by the fire. Outside, the wind carried the faint hum of insects and water. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. He looked into the flames. "No. Not once. Even if it ended me, I would have done it again. We gave people their hearts back." She nodded. "Sometimes I think the light was never ours to control. Maybe it was waiting for someone to open the door." Elias smiled. "Then I'm glad it was you who opened it." She reached for his hand. "It was us." That night the sky glowed faintly gold again, as if the world itself was listening. Years passed quietly after that. When Dr. Rowe fell ill, Elias stayed by her side. She was calm, almost peaceful. On her last evening, as the sun dipped below the mountains, she asked him to open the window. "I want to see the light one more time," she whispered. Elias opened it. The valley shimmered softly, bathed in golden color. "Do you see it?" she asked. He nodded, holding her hand. It never left. Her eyes closed with a smile. "Good. Then neither will I." When she was gone, Elias buried her by the river where the first flowers had bloomed after the experiment. He marked her grave with a simple stone that read, "Anna Rowe, she taught the world to remember." After her passing, Elias lived alone for many years. The valley continued to attract travelers and healers from across the world. Some said they came because they had dreams of a golden light calling them. Others said they simply followed peace until they found it. Elias welcomed them all. He never told them who he was. He taught them how to grow food, how to listen to the river, how to sit quietly without needing answers. Children who visited would sit near him and ask stories about the war. He never told them about battles or pain. Instead, he told them about the moment when people remembered how to love one another again. One little girl once asked him, "What was the light made of?" Elias smiled. "It was made of people who forgave." One evening, long after most visitors had gone home, Elias climbed the hill behind his cabin. He carried the wooden bird he had carved all those years ago. The valley was quiet. The world below was calm. He could see small villages glowing in the distance. He sat under the old pine tree and looked up at the stars. The air shimmered faintly again, not bright, not loud, just a soft wave of gold spreading across the sky. He could feel it against his skin, gentle and warm. For the first time in many years, he heard his brother's voice in his mind. "You kept the promise," it said. Elias smiled through tears. "I tried." "You did more than try," the voice said. "You changed everything." Elias looked at the carved bird in his hands. It felt like now, almost alive. He whispered, "It's time to fly." He placed the bird on the ground and let the wind carry it toward the river. As it fell, it caught the light, and for a moment, it truly looked alive. When morning came, the villagers found Elias sitting peacefully under the tree, his face turned toward the sunrise. His eyes were closed, his lips curved in a quiet smile. They buried him beside Dr. Rowe, under the same flowers that never stopped glowing. People who visited said that when the sun touched their graves, two beams of golden light rose together, crossing in the sky before fading. No one ever rebuilt the Aurora machine. The records were sealed, and the valley became a place of pilgrimage for those who had forgotten what peace felt like. They called it the place of the dawn. Visitors said that when you stood by the river at sunset, you could sometimes hear a voice whisper through the wind, not a command, not a warning, but a reminder. It said, "You are the light." Years turned into decades. Children who grew up in peace became the new leaders of the world. They built hospitals where prisons had stood. They built schools where trenches had been. The story of the experiment was taught not as a tale of science, but of humanity. People began lighting candles every year on the day the light first appeared. They called it the Day of Dawn. No speeches were made, no fireworks, just silence and warmth. In every city, at the same hour, people closed their eyes and remembered that peace was something living inside them. And across the quiet earth, the same golden shimmer always returned, floating through the clouds as if the world itself smiled back. In the end, no one remembered the exact names of all who were there in the mountain. History turned them into legend. Some said the light came from heaven. Others said it came from human hearts. Only the valley remembered the truth. Every spring, the flowers that grew there shone softly at night, and the river sang the same gentle song it had sung since the day the war ended. If you stood there long enough, you could almost feel the hum of the aurora energy still moving through the earth, quiet but alive, a heartbeat that never stopped. And if you listened closely, you could hear a whisper carried by the wind. A light that heals will never fade.